In today's Leeds news, Aaronson return details, Bamford exit unlikely, Leeds linked with new defender, Leeds and Orta go head to head over winger, and key details released. Morning folks, Jer here, Tuesday morning the 11th of June at The View with your Leeds United news. Hope you're having a good week so far. There's a few bits and pieces to get into. I went early with the news yesterday, and just as I published the news, out came the news about Brenden Aaronson, but I decided to not do any other content on it, to hang back, wait till today and try and get as much information from as many different outlets as possible to get some detail on what exactly has gone down with Brenden Aaronson that's bringing him back to the club. The one a week as well. If you like the channel, if you like what we're doing here and you want to support the channel, you can do so by liking this video, which helps get it out to more people, or subscribing to the channel as well. Right, we'll start off with Brenden Aaronson and get that one out of the way before we get to the other information. And yesterday we heard from Graham Smith that Brenden Aaronson had spoken to Daniel Farke and would return to Leeds United for next season as part of the plans. Aaronson had a not too spectacular season at Union Berlin last season, scoring 2 goals and 3 assists all season, and only putting in 2 90-minute performances in the entire campaign, settling for mostly bench appearances or starting and ending up on the bench by the end of the game. Aaronson was the first loanee to exercise his loan release clause from Leeds and left the club pretty much as soon as Leeds' relegation from the Premier League had been confirmed. One of the major issues that Leeds fans will have around getting over the fact that the player is coming back to the club. Removing the emotion is not an easy thing here, and I'm aligned to this as well. Also left before he got any chance to speak to Daniel Farke, who hadn't been appointed at that point, so any chance of involving him in last season plans was taken out of the equation without that conversation. So why don't Leeds sell Brenden Aaronson is the big question that's being asked. Well, Aaronson is on a multi-year deal valued at £25 million, and the issue being that 2 back-to-back lacklustre seasons means Leeds are unlikely to recoup that money. Player amortisation is a big factor in this as well, with his transfer fee being spread over the entire transfer length. Means that if Leeds were to sell him at a loss now, they would have to bank and lock that loss in for PSR, which would go against the club in the PSR situation going into next season. Leeds have only paid £10 million of Brenden Aaronson's transfer fee so far, based off of last season's financials. You would imagine there's more being paid off that over the course of the last 12 months, and we'll see that when the next set of financials come out later on this year. Leeds would need to sell Aaronson then for more than £15 million if they were to break even on that deal or make a profit on him. We were told earlier this month that the 2 Leeds players with the loan exit release clauses that were remaining were Mark Rocket and Jack Harrison. However, now according to The Athletic, who gave us that information initially, they are now saying that the 2 players are Harrison and Brenden Aaronson, and that Aaronson is believed to have held talks with Daniel Farke and waived his loan exit clause for next season in some kind of a middle ground to give up something to appease the fans a little bit, I think. But I'm with BBC's Adam Pope on this one. Adam Pope said, what options does he really have now? And that's a very, very good point. There are not going to be a lot of clubs lining up to take Brenden Aaronson in next season. His wages will be an issue as well. The loan exit clause means they must take 100% of his wages, and after the back of 2 poor seasons back to back, will any club be willing to do that? Aaronson's kind of only left with one option, and that's a return to Leeds United to try and get his career going again. Aaronson has spoken about the Leeds United fans earlier this season as well, and earlier this year he said the following about the relegation season, how he felt about the Leeds United fan base. At the end it was really tough, confidence wise. You go out there, I didn't feel like I was playing my best. I feel like I was letting my teammates down. I felt like I was letting the fan base down at times. The question around this would be, does Brenden Aaronson coming in now mean that Leeds won't move for another number 10? My personal opinion on this is a season in the Championship would do Brenden Aaronson a lot of good, but I personally think he'll get bounced around the Championship, being completely honest. We saw Willie Gnonto, Chris Somerville, Jorginho Rutter, Dan James get lumps kicked out of them last season in the Championship. That will happen this year. Some of my frustrations around Willie Gnonto this year were around the fact that every time he got a kick he went down. That's going to happen again with Brenden Aaronson this year, unless he addresses the big issue, and that is getting stronger in English football. The president of Union Berlin commented on it last year. The manager commented on it last year as well. We covered it earlier on this season, and the player himself doesn't see it as an issue, as he commented earlier this year. So there's a lot in this. I personally am not a fan of the lone players coming back in and playing. We've heard Daniel Farke say earlier this year that he likened them to reheated food. I get the positive output on this. He's a good player in there. There is a good player in there. I believe there's a good player in there. I'm just not too keen on a player who walked out on Leeds United walking back into the dressing room and picking up the pieces. And I'm definitely not okay with the hero's welcome he seems to be getting at the moment online. I'm not into that. Brendan, for me, will have to come back and prove himself, and that's when the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. There is still a loan release clause according to Athletic there. We'll see by the start of the season if somebody else comes in and that gets tempted. We heard Max Fober say he wanted to stay before he left. There's a lot still to play in this, I think, and I'm not 100% convinced Brendan Aaronson is the right player for Leeds to move forward next season, but that's just my opinion. Others will have different opinions, and I'm okay with that. We can agree to disagree on stuff like that, but it's okay. Different opinions, different people, that's fine. So moving on to another player whose exit could be unlikely from Leeds United, and that's Patrick Bamford. According to Phil Hay, speaking on the Square Ball podcast, he said that the exit of Patrick Bamford from Leeds is more difficult than people may realise. Nottingham Forest were said to have an interest in the player back in January, but due to their PSR issues now, that could remove that from the table, or any kind of another move from them for Patrick Bamford. Hayes said the following on the Square Ball podcast: for Bamford, it's a little bit more difficult, partly because his wage will be high, so it's not like it's a salary that Championship clubs can easily afford. Bamford scored 9 goals last season for Leeds United, all coming after Christmas break, and his biggest issue last season was his availability. Injured again at the end of the season at an important part for Leeds, and injured for most of the first half of the season. He spent 3 seasons at Leeds being mostly injured, which is his biggest problem. Leeds will want availability next season over ability, I think, and Patrick Bamford will be one of those players that Leeds would want to have involved, but if he's not going to be available, it might be something Leeds would like to move on, but that might become incredibly difficult as the player still has time left on his contract. He's only 30 years of age and is unlikely to take a pay cut, so unless he agrees to take a pay cut to go to another club, or a club from Saudi and Qatar come in for the player, it's very unlikely we will see an exit of Pat Bamford this summer, but things can change and we'll wait and see. Moving into the rumour mill stuff, there's a few players linked today, but we'll again bracket these as rumour mill until anything solid comes through on them. And we'll start off with the first one. That's a link around a new defender. According to Voteball International, Leeds are said to be interested in PEC Zwolle defender Aaronson Garcia MacNulty. Leeds and Leicester are both name-checked as 2 clubs that will be interested in bringing in the young defender to their clubs. MacNulty made 32 appearances last season for Zwolle, playing primarily at left-back, although his preferred position is as a centre-back. About the player himself, his characteristics have been noted that his composure on the ball is a standout characteristic, as well as his versatility, and he would be seen as a player that would fit the Daniel Farke style of play. As one part of Aaronson Garcia MacNulty's name suggests, the MacNulty part, he is of Irish descent, although born in Spain, and started his football career with Real Betis before moving to Wolfsburg in Germany, having a loan spell at NEC Breda and then finish up at PEC Zwolle last season. He's also represented Ireland at under 19 and under 21 level and scored twice last season in his 32 games for the Dutch side. MacNulty, as I said, can play left back and did play left back for most of last season, but his primary and best position is labelled as being a centre back. He's 21 years of age, he's 6'2", with a good height and can score some goals as well. He's an exciting player from an Irish perspective. I know people in Ireland talk very highly about him, and hopefully will not defer his allegiances to Spain and will stick with Ireland for the future, but he is a player that Irish fans would be aware of, having played pretty well at under 21 level for Ireland. Moving on to the next one today, and this is around Leeds and Victor Orta at Sevilla going head to head over a new winger. According to ED News, Leeds and Seville are interested in Excelsior winger Shohab Driouech. PSV are also mentioned as a club that are interested in the player, and probably the more likely destination should they decide to get involved in this. A fee of between 3 and 3.25 million is being labelled as what could be enough to get Driouech, who is a 22-year-old who has 60 appearances so far in top flight Dutch football. He had 6 goals and 6 assists last season in 26 games for the club, who did get relegated from the area division. He's a left winger and he's noted as enjoying cutting inside and shooting, so a very similar profile of player to Crescencio Somerville in that regard. And then moving on today to the final bits and pieces, and these are some key dates that have been announced for next season. The 2024-25 Sky Bet Championship season fixtures will be released at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, June 26th. I'm no doubt we'll digest those fixtures on the podcast coming into the start of the season. Leeds will kick off their season the weekend of Saturday, August 10th, and the season will wrap up around the weekend of May 3rd, 2025. Transfer window opens between June 14th and April 30th this season, and Leeds have confirmed 2 friendlies so far. Harrogate Town on Friday the 19th of July at 7:30pm, and home against Valencia in Ellen Road on Saturday the 3rd of May, a 3pm kickoff, likely to be the last game that Leeds play before they kick off their season campaign 7 days later. That's going to be it for me today, folks. Massive thanks as always for supporting the channel. You can check out yesterday's news video down there somewhere, and there's some interesting details there, as well as the subscribe buttons down there if you want to click that as well. I'm back tomorrow morning for more Leeds news. Have a great rest.